Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy. If you haven't heard, Week 1 is here, which means there's an opening night, Thursday night football game, which means we need to break down the fantasy angle of all of it for Showdown, single game parlays, Underdog Pick'em. We'll run the projections from runthesims.com and get it all done for you. If you're looking to really take your game to the next level for DFS, runthesims.com is where you want to be. Or if you don't care about DFS and you just want the props, you want the projection, you want to bring it in from every single site, even the Underdog Simulator is up there right now to show you how to fill out a actual entry and what the actual percentages will be to see if it's an actual plus EV move. Bringing in my partner in crime to bring this all down is Justin Freeman. Sir, football is back. Are you excited or not?
I'm ready to go. Thursday night football is always like a clutch opener, like Ravens Chiefs. That's pretty solid. Like, we're gonna get into the doldrums in week 3, 4, 5 Thursday night football. You know, when we get Titans Jags for the 18th millionth time. But hey, we got an actual good football game to watch. It's early in the season. We have eyes wide open to the fact that we're going to become millionaires by season end. Like, hope is on the horizon, my friend.
Well, we'll try to become millionaires in week 1. I'll try to win one. You can win one. You good people out there can win one. But were you surprised? Because we launched that prop sniper tool at Run the Sims midway through last year. Were you shocked at how many people wanted that?
It was wild. Like, it's funny. You think like you have about as many tools as you think everyone possibly needs to degen all the way they want to. But then you launch a tool like this and you're like, holy cow, we just like added 50% of our subscribers just by launching this tool that everybody's been begging for. So yeah, point A, listen to your customers when they tell you what they want, and then part B, build it for them, right? So it's been great, and I think everybody's had some pretty strong results with that. Just kind of getting into the rhythm of the week going forward is going to be a big deal. You know, keeping up with injuries, trying to stay on top of those things, and yeah, just picking off those lines as they pop up throughout the week.
Well, right now, if you go to the very top, if you have the prop sniper, and there's 2 separate packages. If you get the full Run the Sims package, you'll get everything included, or you can just get the props package, which will give you the prop sniper, which will show you across the board, however you actually want to see everything. You can see it in nice grid form with all of the books and the best possible ones, or just the best bets from which individual sites. This Isaiah Likely prop for Thursday Night Football, it finally went down. At Underdog, it's actually still 2, but for a while they were hanging the 2 receptions at plus 140. Now it's 1.5 plus 140, because now that Mark Andrews is clear to play, all of a sudden Isaiah Likely isn't running as many routes, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about when Mark Andrews was on the field last year, Isaiah Likely was running like less than 20% of the routes on average. That's equating to well under 1 reception per game when he's in that type of role. So yeah, that even still at 1.5, I think that's especially when you're getting plus odds on that, I'd hit it right now today.
Yeah, it was just looking at the prop sniper, it's still the number 1 still, even at 1.5 from 2. It's the second best underdog play of the week so far, although we do know that all of the props and all of the underdog fantasy lines for Pick'em aren't out yet. Just a reminder out there, besides runthesims.com, which you should most definitely go get, code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy right now will get you a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. But get this, Justin, you ready for this? I got Underdog to give me an extra $25,000 as a bonus to throw on top of everything for Pick'em this year. So it's a Pick'em tournament that's season long, and whoever has the best Pick'em percentage wins. And that's not number of entries won, it's number of actual props that you play on Underdog won. So even if you lose every single 5-play entry, you go 4 of 5, you have an 80% in that contest, which will probably win it for you, I'm guessing.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, we built a lot of tools to try to find plus EV wagers and opportunities. And you basically just added $25,000 worth of gasoline for plus EV. So yeah, I would say go do that, guys. What are you waiting on?
Yeah, code Mayo, the up to $1,000 bonus. And you don't even have to play like big stakes for this. You can make up to 8. I think you can make up to 8 or even 10 Pick'em entries now on Underdog. Play them for $1. then hell, you can play the entire season for $18 and try to win the $5,000 first prize if you really want to. I mean, that's the real plus EV way to do it, isn't it, Justin? If you're a low stakes player, like what's better?
So how do I do this, Pat? I go to the website and I look for your content?
No. You hit the description right now. There is a link down there. It's to a Google form. It takes less than 10 seconds to fill out. You enter your email, you punch in your Underdog handle, boom, you're in the contest.
All right. I'm definitely doing that.
Yeah, you should most definitely. Yeah. You can just play Pick'em, and the thing is, like, there's weekly prizes too of like $500 to the winner. But you don't even have to play every week. Like, if you forget to play a week, it's not that big of a deal. You just need to make 180 picks by the time the end of the season comes along.
Yeah, well, I'm going to make 180 picks regardless, so I may as well also try to win $25,000. So.
I mean, I might make 180 picks the first week here based on everything that's going on. So I'm going to try to pump the brakes a little bit. We got some pick and plays, but let's talk about DraftKings Showdown before we do anything else. This is where the big money is going to lie in week one before anything really gets going. We were going to talk about the Eagles game with the Packers in Brazil, but the confirmed pricing is not out for that. So we'll touch on that a little bit towards the end. But in terms of the sim runner right now, we can jump over to Run the Sims and see what we got cooking here for week number 1. And it does seem like everything is kosher on the end of the 100% at the very bottom. Oh, we got, because I messed around with it. Yeah, so you went in and upped Carson Steele. So let's start with Carson Steele. $200 on DraftKings. And there's legitimate buzz about him from some people that he's actually going to do something in this opening game. I'm a bit dubious, is what I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like I was talking to you pre-show about this guy, trying to figure out still at this point whether to think of him as more of an actual running back, like a Clyde Edwards-Helaire backup type of guy, or a fullback, like a Michael Burton, who was in this role for years in the Chiefs offense. Maybe he's like some sort of a hybrid version of that, just a big old boy who can do a lot of things in the backfield. That being said, I'm a bit skeptical that he's going to have any type of real role. Like, obviously the big news as of today when we're recording is Clyde Edwards-Helaire is being placed on the NFI list, meaning he's going to be out for at least 4 games, dealing with what sounds like some pretty serious mental health issues. So hope everything's okay with him. But that's going to basically make it a pretty slimmed down backfield with Isaiah Pacheco, Samaje Perine, and Carson Steele. Perine, of course, cut by the Broncos this past training camp. A lot of folks speculated he might end up on the Bengals. The Chiefs snipe him in hopefully a way that I think is going to probably make the Bengals a little unhappy that they didn't end up getting him. But so Perine's priced at $3K, Carson Steele $200. I think ultimately people are going to assume that Perine goes into this 1-to-1 Jerick McKinnon role replacement. I think that's probably a pretty safe ceiling for him. Here he is. He's brand new to the team. He's been there for 5 days at this point, learning the offense there in Kansas City. I would not expect he has some sort of mega role. I don't think Carson Steele's the guy you're looking for either. This looks like a smash spot, honestly, for Pacheco.
See, that's exactly where I came down on it as well, and I got a lot of pushback on it. I think that Perine might eventually get that quote-unquote Jerick role or whatever, some combination of what Jerick and Clyde Edwards-Helaire were doing. I just find that hard to believe week 1 on a new team. He's just going to step into that role, which the reason that McKinnon had it in the first place is because he was a veteran, he knew the playbook, and he knew exactly, the routes to run with Mahomes because of that connection. He was just a much better receiver. It's not that Perine's a bad receiver. That's like the one thing that Jerick actually does well.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that kept Pacheco off the field on third downs in the past was questions about his ability to pass block, questions about his ability to contribute in the receiving game. And he's shored up a lot of those questions over the past season. And I think the coaching staff is ready to actually make him a bit more of a 3-down back, a featured back. Perine can be there to take off some of that heavy lifting and just reduce the workload. I think the Chiefs know week 1 against Baltimore, important game as it is, it's not going to make or break their postseason hopes. They need Isaiah Pacheco to be ready to rock and roll when the playoffs come around. So I don't think they'll try to wear him down, but I think as of right now, he's their best bet by a long shot, and this should be among his highest workload games.
Yeah, so one of the first things that I did in terms of Pick'em on Underdog is you can use Kelsey in this game. There's a a gimme, a free square on Underdog for Kelsey. It's 0.5 yards, so you can just take the higher on that. And then Pacheco, 2.5 receptions was the first thing that I went to. Like, his catch rate is astronomically high to begin with. It's like 91%. And you don't know how P. Ryan's going to factor in. You don't know how anyone else in the backfield is going to factor in. Like, he kept averaging 3 catches a game anyway to end the year. And that's with some of the healthier guys who were still around. So I really like him in that regard. You can see, like, when we jump back over to run the Sims, I actually ran the Sims on this projection, or on the Showdown slate. And I actually ran the Sim Runner as well. My best graded lineup, Justin, is, and you can explain this a little bit better than I can, obviously, but just to look at the page right now, it is, let's see, EV of 175.2%. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It is Mark Andrews as the captain with Lamar Jackson and Rashad Bateman as a 3-3 with Mahomes, Rashee Rice, and Xavier Worthy. I feel like some combination of that lineup is going to be incredibly popular, though.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you think about if you're building this lineup by hand, first thing any two people are going to do is want to click on Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, like guys who just consistently stuff the stat sheet for 20 points. Like, you feel pretty confident that both those guys are going to get there. And then the next thing you're going to do is look for the guys who can sort of flesh it out from there. Like, a majority of your salary is going to be eaten up with those two quarterbacks. And, you know, Andrews is kind of right there in a really sexy range as far as not too expensive, not bargain bin basement guy. Like, he throwing him in the captain spot gives you plenty of upside, and then you're fleshing it out with a pretty balanced build. So yeah, I'd say like that may grade out to be like a really strongly projected lineup, but then once you sort of figure out like duplications and that sort of thing, I think there's plenty of reasons to come off of that one.
Well, if we just kind of take a look at, and this is a special package at Run the Sims, the Sim Runner Pro, so it's basically the simulations on top of simulations. But I'm looking at the plus EV players right now. The most EV player on the board is Rashee Rice. Noah Gray is actually second at $1,600. Then Xavier Worthy, then Harrison Butker, then Patrick Mahomes, then your guy, Carson Steele at $200. Like, what if you played Carson Steele at $200? Like, what is the expectation of what he would have to do to make him worthwhile, do you think?
Yeah, you think it's less about what Carson Steele has to do and more about what the premier players at the highest salaries have to do. Basically, what you're saying is the Kelseys, the Zay Flowers, the Mark Andrews, the guys who basically you have to skimp on other players to get to, you need all of them to go off in tandem. And then it doesn't really matter so much what Carson Steele does. He could get you 4.5 fantasy points, and that'd be totally fine because playing him at $200 Stone Men allowed you to get up to the 4 premium guys who you had to have on this slate. So it's really as much of a statement about who you're pairing him with as opposed to him himself. Now, obviously, the more he does, the more he reduces that burden, right? So if he can luck his way into a touchdown or maybe get a couple catches on top of that and flirt with like 8 fantasy points, now all of a sudden he's kind of getting in on his own right and sort of like working his way in. But you're always thinking about sort of these combinatorial variables with Showdown, because it's never like 1v1 in a Showdown situation. It's always 3v3. It's that combination that starts with Carson Steele and has 2 higher price guys attached to it versus 3 more middle of the pack mid-price guys.
So if he scored a touchdown, he would be worth it, is what you're saying, if the other guys went off.
Yeah.
Because it kind of reminds me.
I think so, yeah.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of when Juszczyk scored the touchdown in the Super Bowl, because he was also at like $800 that week, wasn't he?
Exactly. Yeah, and then what you're hoping is that there's not really that middle tier price guy that also goes off, and that had to have it kind of guy, because if the middle price goes off, then probably you didn't need to go hunting quite that far down. You probably could have played a kicker. You probably could have played a defense and gotten pretty close to the same amount of points as Steele.
So if it's not, so Steele's $200. That's why he ends up becoming the part of the plus EV players. Is it because they're favorites in the game that we see so few Baltimore players pop up as plus EV players? Because to me, when you start thinking about like the minus EV players, which you can find on the who are the worst guys that you can put in your lineup, it's a lot of Ravens. It's like Charlie Kohler at $600, Tylan Wallace, a receiver on the Ravens, for like $1,400, Deontay Hardy at $800. Then you get like your jabronis who play like Sky Moore and Jared Wiley and Mecole Hardman, those types. But it does feel like a tertiary receiving option from Baltimore would be the real differentiator here to me.
Yeah, it kind of comes down to projection confidence in this type of game. So, how confident can you feel that you've nailed that three wide receiver set that's going to come out here for Baltimore? We currently have it as Zay Flowers the one, Rashad Bateman the two, Nelson Aguilar the three. But then you also have Tez Walker, Tylan Wallace, Deontay Hardy rounding out that lineup. So, would it surprise anyone if Nelson Aguilar was all of a sudden just a rotational guy, and Tez Walker, who I believe is the fourth round pick for the Ravens at wide receiver, he's more involved in the offense? Or if Isaiah Likely is now making it where the Ravens are coming out in two tight end sets more frequently. These are some of the things that I think could happen. So week one is always a good reminder that volatility is your friend. Like, we have assumptions that are baked in here, that are as good as we know to be true right now, but this is as good a week as any to say, like, I have a feeling Tez Walker's the guy, or I have a feeling that this is the week Ravens finally go two tight ends, even though they haven't done it with Andrews and Likely in the past, but this is the year, right? So, just make your stand and go with it. I think it's a great principle to go with.
So just to look at before we start like grading lineups or anything like that, of like how everything is going to turn out, when we just go off pure projections alone, taking a look at it, the frequency, the most spit out lineup from Run the Sims is Mahomes at captain with Pacheco, Chiefs D, Rice, Kelsey, and then Justin Tucker is the only bring back in a 5-1 onslaught. Like, do you like those lineups for the Giant GPP, or do you like those lineups at all?
I like onslaughts in general in the Giant GPPs. I think usually I'm looking for I'm looking for something that makes that lineup very unique, because the worst thing that can possibly happen is we finally win the Millie Maker, right? Finally happens, it's our turn, and we're chopping it up with 5,000 other people. And that $1 million top prize is now worth $250 or whatever the number is. And it's like, wow, we won, but we kind of lost all at the same time. So we want to avoid those situations. But we don't want to get like too galaxy brain either, because I think if you're shooting strictly for like unique lineups so that you can have the $1 million all to yourself, sounds wonderful. A lot of times you're going to end up playing such putrid lineups that you have no real chance of actually capitalizing on that. So there's a sweet spot in the middle, trying to find real shortcuts to basically be able to weed out the very heavily duped lineups and get something that's just, maybe going to be chopped 5 or 10 ways or 15 ways, and that's still like a really nice payday, really nice reward. But yeah, so I think 5-1s are a good starting point. Leaving a little bit extra salary on the table is always a good starting point. We'll get ownership projections a little bit later in the week, trying to figure out what a low owned lineup looks like when you multiply out the ownership across your roster. That's a good starting point as well. So, going through and just kind of hand picking a few lineups from the most optimal set, and then having a reason why they look super attractive for you is going to be a really good place to be.
So the one that's duped the most right now through this like one sim that I ran, there's two of them back to back. They're both spit out around 18 times, both Patrick Mahomes captain. It's Mahomes, Butker, Tucker, Rice, Worthy, and Lamar Jackson. So it's the same lineup, but it has Lamar and not Kelsey in it. And then you have Mahomes, Butker, Pacheco, Rice, Worthy, and then Zay Flowers. I was actually surprised that the single Raven, be it Tucker or Worthy or just whoever fits with Chiefs onslaught as a move. I think for me, I'm not going to max this out. I'm not going to play 150 lineups like I know that most people aren't going to do this week. Like, if I'm going to throw in 1, 2, or 3 and think that, like, hey, I mean, listen, you're playing against 200,000 people. You're probably not going to win. But the only path to the top for me, if I'm playing that way, is I'm doing Ravens onslaught, not Chiefs onslaught.
I mean, people love the rushing attack for the Ravens, right? So you're going to get a lot of like naked Lamar, or Lamar and one wideout, or Lamar with Derrick Henry, things like that. What you're not going to see is Lamar with three pass catchers. That's going to be played very infrequently. So, and especially given how cheap the supporting cast is around Lamar, you could certainly go with like Lamar and then maybe call it Zay Flowers and skip all the way down to Nelson Aguilar and then round it out with maybe you could maybe even go up to Andrews, but maybe a likely is what you need to do. So you could play around with a lot of different builds. I like the idea of making a Captain Lamar team with three individual pass catchers from the Ravens. And then you're thinking, well, what happens on the Chiefs side of the ball that would allow this to happen? Either
Running.
either the rushing attack, right? Like the Chiefs get up early and they make it where Lamar's just passing back constantly because we know that them passing a ton is not their base game plan. So Pacheco is a great natural pair for that. If you need the salary, perhaps that's where you go down to Carson Steele or someone like that. But yeah, just kind of avoid the pass catching side from the Chiefs as I go to Ravens on slots.
So I filtered a 4-2 Ravens lineup with Lamar as captain. So we can just toggle with the captain spot. We'll go with Lamar captain, which you wouldn't have to do. Although if you do go with Lamar as captain, all of a sudden you've eaten up a lot of salary. But the best lineup right now per the projections would be Lamar as captain with Andrews, Bateman, and Zay Flowers, and then Pacheco and Butker from the Chiefs side.
Yep, that makes sense. So when they score touchdowns, it's with Pacheco. When they march the ball down the field and fail to score, Butker's the guy that's doing that. I like that lineup a lot.
Yeah, so this is the one that I really like. Like if we're playing off the narrative that you just kind of talked about, the story that we're telling, and this one has very few dupes, but in my mind it makes a lot of sense. Lamar captain with the same three, Flowers, Andrews, and Bateman, but it also has Pacheco and Chiefs D as the other side. So basically, Derrick Henry fumbles, they return it to the house. Lamar throws a pick six. They get up that way, and then it forces Lamar to keep throwing and running to everyone else, and it kind of takes the ball out of the hands of the Chiefs offense. When they do get it, they're just going to run out the clock.
They're salting away the clock, and Ravens are playing as fast as they possibly can. Even when they're not scoring touchdowns, it's Lamar scrambles left. Lamar hits Flowers for a 8-yard gain. They're just marching, taking the easy dink and dunk. So yeah, lots of ways that script can play out.
Yeah, and that would be my favorite type of one if I'm not going to play a ton of lineups. Like if I play the Mahomes or Kelsey, or even just be like, oh, I'm pretty sneaky here. I'll play a Pacheco captain, and like the Pacheco captain team, if you're going to like play itself out, like naturally, everyone just ends up on the same 5 guys. Like, what am I even doing here? Like you won, like I played the first week of F1 and we won the big tournament. Like I won the big giant GPP, we won the smaller GPP, and I won a good amount of money. I was in for like $400 and I think I won like 3,500, something like that. But you played later on in the year and you won the big GPP on DraftKings. You lost money, didn't you?
Yeah, it's happened a few times that way. F1's a pretty unique sport where that happens quite a bit. And there's the chalk really concentrates in F1. So when things go according to script, they go really according to script. So yeah, that's super possible. Here in the NFL, like there's a little bit less of a possibility that happens specifically, but the principle still remains like $1 million up top. Let's not split this thing a million different ways with all of our closest friends and family here. Let's try to think of an angle that gets us a bit more unique, a bit off the pace. And honestly, like it used to be the meta in Showdown to try to like be very, make sure your lineup does tell a story, a really cohesive one. And now the meta is almost like make sure at least one thing in your lineup breaks that storytelling theory, because that's the thing that now gets you off of the chalk and lowers your dupe rate quite a bit.
So let's stick with these 4-2 Ravens Chiefs lineups. So let's say we don't want to use Lamar as captain. Who do you think the best captain would be from the Ravens?
Yeah, I think Derrick Henry is certainly on the table here, although I am not a believer in Derrick Henry. He may punish me for this. I know a lot of people are, taking him in the second round of drafts. He's 30 years old this year. Not my guy. I think Zay Flowers is the guy who has shown the most upside. I think it's either him or Mark Andrews are the ones that I'm drawn to the most. Zay Flowers has shown it more recently. Andrews obviously banged up for large portions of last year, but I still have a soft spot in my heart. I think he's a really talented player. So, but let's say Zay Flowers is probably the strongest degree of confidence.
All right, where's Zay Flowers here? Hardman, Justice Hill. We need to get old Zay in here. Why can I not find him? Zay, there he is. I'll just type in Zay. That makes things much easier on myself. So the best lineup that's projected for Zay Flowers is Flowers as captain with Andrews, Bateman, and Lamar, and Mahomes and Butker. Like, that actually makes a ton of sense, that you have to hope for, like, Justin Watson to score, or that Carson Steele guy to catch a touchdown somewhere, Noah Gray to catch a touchdown, and you have to be okay with them not killing you. Like, that's all they do in the game. But Mahomes soaks up all the points. Or that's like a Kelsey 10-point game and catches a touchdown. A Rice 10-point game and catches a touchdown. Where Mahomes gets all the stats, it's just completely diversified, and they stall a few times, kick some field goals, and then the Ravens just have to play catch-up. But it's only really Mahomes who stands out. Although I do find in Showdown, like, it's really hard to be like, oh yeah, why don't we just play Mahomes and Kelsey? That always works.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, sometimes just don't overcomplicate things and stay out of your own way. But Mahomes, honestly, like naked Mahomes, he scores in the red zone a lot on his feet. Like, even though he's not like a run first quarterback, he's always improvising inside the 5-yard line. So that's just one of those things that happens a lot.
If it was left to you and you, like, all things being equal, would you rather have Bateman or Aguilar?
Yeah, I think it's Bateman for me. We have a higher projection on him right now. And he's got more familiarity in that offense. It would not surprise me if by like week 4, I would change my answer. But heading into week 1, it's Bateman.
Yeah, I think I'd just still go Aguilar. I've been through the whole Rashad Bateman experience. At least there were times last year where, like, Aguilar will just pull out a random 51-yard catch for a touchdown. I was like, oh boy.
That's
like,
true.
And there were even, like, it was mainly when Andrews was banged up. But you'd think, like, oh, likely gets this red zone look. But they were just going to Aguilar, like the guy with the butterfingers. They're like, yeah, let's throw it to him. He'll figure it out. And, like, he's not bad sometimes. Like, in a good Aguilar game, he's not bad. You see the bad Aguilar games, and you wonder how this guy's still in the NFL. But the good ones, you're like, yeah, this guy's not bad. I can see why he once got that huge contract.
Yeah, he does show flashes from time to time, which, Bateman, man, it's been a long time since we've seen that flash. I do feel more confident he'll be out there for more snaps, but, once you do have to actually convert those into fantasy points to help us win $1 million.
All right, so I got some underdog picks for you. Ready?
Let's do it.
So the big one that I played, once again, you can get code Mayo at Underdog. If you don't have an account, they'll get you a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. And then you can go play in that Pick'em pool that's down in the description for a bonus $25,000. You just have to play on Underdog, submit your handle, and boom, you're in that pool. But here's what I played. And it's a $10 max for this Kelsey free square, but it's a nice bankroll builder if you want to do it. So it's Kelsey higher than 0.5 yards, Pacheco higher than 2.5 receptions, and Derrick Henry higher than 6.5 receiving yards, which, by a lot of your projections at Run the Sims, really likes a lot. And I like it too, especially after taking a bunch of Gus Edwards unders last year, and he just randomly had 15 yards receiving for no reason. I think
so frustrating.
Derrick Henry is going to be more, especially early in games. The Ravens love to start each half passing to their running back. It's incredible. And it's a part of their offense which they don't ever really explore. And I don't think that the Chiefs will necessarily expect it coming with Derrick Henry, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and Derrick Henry, I mean, he has hands. He can catch the football. Like, it does not take a magnificent skill set to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield. Now, doing something with it, a different story. But we've seen some of Derrick Henry's best plays have come on little dump offs out of the backfield, getting him in open space and just letting him go. Like, now, I think that's great. 6.5. That's basically saying, will he catch a ball? Yes or no? And I think that's a really solid yes.
And I'm kind of on board with you for that as well. I'm going to rerun the Sims on these inputs and just see what we got for everything. But we have Derrick Henry projected, I believe. I mean, you have it in front of you for what, 14, I think it is?
Feels a smidge high.
It does feel a bit high when it comes to Derrick Henry, but that's where I like to be on him.
Let's see what we come up with here. There he is. He is at 13.5 yards receiving. 1.5 4 receptions.
I mean, that's pretty good, I would have to say. Like
Yes.
if you're gonna dive into this sort of thing, like these are the ones where I want to be at. And I made this before the likely one, so I actually made another one. This one's 5 picks for, how much did I play this one for? $121, pays $2,700. So bear with me on this one. I think Rashad Bateman sucks, so I went lower than 30.5 receiving yards for him. Even if he's going to be out there, I don't think he's very good. And then I have some anti-correlation in here because I have Lamar Jackson higher than 220.5 passing yards, which seems like a pretty low number, honestly, against the Chiefs.
It is a low number. Like I think we're gonna anticipate his basically his drop back rate to be higher in this game than most any other game for the season. So yeah, I think like I'm seeing his pass attempts under pop off the page in a good way. Like I hit that earlier in the week, but I think passing yardage, I still would rather lean towards the over there with Lamar in this game.
Yeah, and that's where I'm leaning. And the big part of it as well, as you can see, like we have the projection up for Lamar right now, and Lamar's passing total is 230.7. So he's almost 10 yards above where the over-under is set on Underdog right now. So I was trying to think to myself, like, how do I make that make sense and try to both correlate and anti-correlate along with it? Because if you can find ones like having a Bateman under receiving yards and a Lamar over passing yards is just going to boost up what I'm doing in terms of what the payout is going to be. So I went with Zay Flowers higher than 51.5 receiving yards. Like someone needs to be higher. I took that Isaiah Likely lower than 2 receptions, and I just went back to the Pacheco higher than 2.5 receptions. Like, I don't want to say that it can't lose because it's like 25-1, which it probably is not going to win. But I really like that. Like, I'm going to play a 5-banger. I mean, all 5 of these are going to count for me in the contest. Straight, actually, the Pacheco one won't because it's a Scorcher. Scorchers don't count in that. So 4 of the ones that I'm playing will count in the contest. They're all Ravens. And if I figured out the Ravens side of the ball, it feels like if the Lamar one hits, that I might be able to get all of them.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You put a lot of eggs in one basket. That's lowered your number of things you got to get right. Classic DFS strategy, and now you've applied it to pick 'em. So well done, Pat.
Yeah. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Supercharger, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your #1 ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Do you want to talk about the Eagles game at all? Just like early impressions? Because we don't have the pricing, so it's hard to figure out what's going to happen in terms of like how to construct salaries, who are going to be the better captains. I will say I did actually make a pick'em entry for that game as well. I ended up going with, and I'll tell you my reasoning for these ones, was this one. 100 pays $600, so it's 6-1. Josh Jacobs, higher than 2.5 receptions. Jordan Love, higher than 5.5 rushing yards. Devonta Smith, higher than 60.5 receiving yards. So when I try to mix everything in my mind about how that works, the Eagles retain a great pressure rate. I think they're going to be able to get to the quarterback. We saw Love in games that was either close against teams with the top 10 pressure rate or games where they were trailing actually crush this number on the ground. He had a bunch where he didn't run. Those were usually games they won handily. And with Jacobs, although Marshawn Lloyd looks like he's going to play, no Dillon figures to me like he's going to get on the field more often than not. And it's not like he's a terrible pass catcher. And in those games where the Packers were playing catch up most of the time, be it Aaron Jones, I think it was Patrick Taylor was one, just Love check down a bunch in those spots, especially when the pressure was coming at him. So just have the low numbers there. You can get over pretty easily. And with Devonta Smith, I think Devonta Smith is going to be wildly underrated this year in terms of the number of yards he's going to get. Like, he beat that number in 10 out of his past 12 games to end last year. And with Kellen Moore currently the offensive coordinator, he's going to put more motion into play over anything else. That I think that really is a big boon to Devonta Smith. I mean, it might not be. Maybe it does lead everything to A.J. Brown, but I just think that's helpful for him to get the right matchups.
Yeah, Kellen Moore is the big wild card in this whole slate to me. Like, if he's legit and has boosted the entire Eagles offense to where we saw prior to 2023, the sky's honestly the limit. And I have a tendency we tend to come in low on Devonta Smith or really the entire Eagles passing attack in general. So that'd be one thing I would keep my eye on if you're playing around with inputs on Run the Sims for this particular slate. If you believe in the Eagles, make your inputs suggest that, boost their points scored, boost their pace, decrease their rush rate, like make it look like they are a throw heavy team that's going to be successful this year because they struggled at times last year. But I will say, like, you see Devonta Smith basically paralleling AJ Brown in a lot of games. So yeah, AJ Brown has these monster outings, and then a lot of times he looks pretty similar to Devonta Smith in terms of what that median outcome looks like. So yeah, I think it's a pretty solid slip. You might have to convince me a bit harder on Devonta, but I think I like every other piece of that.
I mean, I'm looking at your stock projections right now. You have him 8 yards over that number, and you said you're conservative on it.
Yeah, I guess, Pat.
I figured that'd be good enough. I think that, like, but I like what you said though. If you're actually being conservative on the Eagles passing game, like, that's baked into how you factor everything out, and it's already giving me his over. That if I'm projecting that he's going to be better than AJ Brown, at least initially with Kellen Moore, that I would actually boost him up a little bit more. I think that I'd rather be on him than be on A.J. Brown in this game. Although A.J. Brown, listen, if it was the question who has 200 yards or more, I would pick A.J. Brown because he's that type of player. But to be over 61, I like Smith.
Yeah. No, I think it's a pretty solid slip. I think there are some interesting elements to keep in mind from as you're making slips or as you're making showdown lines for this game. You hinted at Marshawn Lloyd basically been banged up. There's question marks about whether he's going to be available for this game or not. Seems like he's trending towards yes, but I think best case scenario is Marshawn Lloyd is like a distant RB3 at this point behind Emmanuel Wilson. The team's basically said, like, we're operating with Emmanuel Wilson as our RB2 in this game. What that tells me is Josh Jacobs is going to get all he can handle and this game, whether that's on the rushing side or the receiving side. I think he's going to have like vintage Josh Jacobs Raiders type of workloads in this game. It's not been Matt LaFleur's typical MO to feed a single running back exclusively, but I think it'll look a lot like that here in week 1 with Josh Jacobs. And then where I think it gets really funky on the Packers side is the receiver rotation. I think it's completely up for grabs. We've got it basically projected right now where Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs are very close 1-2 in this offense. Christian Watson and Dontavian Wicks, like a 3-4 there together. But, Bo Melton's in the mix. We saw him pop off a little bit last year. It's hard to know exactly what these rotations are going to look like. It's a great slate to build a lot of lineups and cover your bases with Packers receivers.
Do you find this one's more fun than the Thursday night game?
I do. I think it'll be a higher scoring game. I think neither of these teams have as strong a defenses as what we're going to see from Baltimore, Kansas City. Like, it's funny. Like, we're still kind of stuck on Chiefs Ravens sounds like offense. No, those are defense first teams at this point. Like, the days of Pat Mahomes scoring like 30 on the reg are over. Like, I mean, he's doesn't have that same level of upside he had early in his career. That's just not the way the Chiefs are set up to play football. Whereas, Jalen Hurts, on the other hand, very different story. And I think that shows off in fantasy ADP through redraft, through best ball, and all that. And yeah, I think Hurts is in for a monster year.
Looking at the stock projections at Run the Sims right now, like, you have Jaden Reed at 20 or at 19% of the receiving market share, Romeo Doubs at 18%, Christian Watson at 12, Wicks at 12, Melton at 3, Malik Heath at 2, Musgrave at 12, Tucker Kraft at 6. Like, I think if I'm going to be making lineups for this, and I'll be making more lineups for this game, almost like what you mentioned, I think that I'm just going to go Romeo Dubs and just call him like 30% of the targets and 40% of the TD market share. Like, I think you kind of hit it on the head. And like, that would be the guy that I would go with, because honestly, I think he's the most unpopular of all those guys. But I think that I would build my lineups with Dubs and Watson over Wicks and Reed, because I think they're flashy. I can most definitely see them getting there and being the best too, but everything that we've seen throughout the preseason, even towards last year, Kid Romeo's always on the field. 2 wide receiver sets, he's out there.
Yeah, and he had periods 2 years ago where he just absolutely evaporated off the field and was missing. Like just he never was getting balls thrown his way. Last year, he rebounded in a really big way, became an actual target earner in the offense and productive with some of those targets. So yeah, I think he's the closest thing to a lock that you have among that group of four. I think Jaden Reed has a higher ceiling. In fact, there's probably several guys who have a higher true ceiling, but Jaden Reed a higher ceiling but a lower floor than Dubs. So yeah, I think that's a great angle on Dubs. Ownership has to reflect the fact that he's going to be the least sexy of that group of four.
Yeah, and then you can go manually upgrade them. And then with Watson, I still think that although we saw Wicks in the preseason from Love end up with that really deep reception, that might actually help us in terms of ownership, because I do think that Watson is still that guy in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be in the driver's seat until he's forced out. And I think they still want it to be Christian Watson if they can.
For sure. It's like how they want it to be Musgrave and not Tucker Kraft, but Kraft
Yep.
kind of seems like he's a little bit better at times.
And that may just simply not matter. Like, you got to be on the field, buddy.
And then you do not have that at all on the Eagles side of the ball. Like it's super clear who the 3 wide receiver set is. It's AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and 2 receiver sets. Jahan Dotson coming in as the 3rd receiver. They cleared that up for us, dropping Paris Campbell off the roster. And there's not anybody really in the conversation there. Dallas Goedert, probably an underrated tight end on this slate. People always forget about Dallas Goedert, I guess, just because he's been so hurt for so much of his career. Everybody just kind of forgets, like, when he's been on the field, he's been a great target earner, and he's really good at scoring touchdowns.
You have Dotson at 11% of the market share, Goddard at 16% of the targets, Barkley at 11%, and then 27 for AJ Brown, 24 for Devonta Smith. I think that's like pretty accurate. But do you see a scenario where potentially Dotson crushes the value of Goddard or vice versa?
We have not seen a wide receiver 3 do anything in the Eagles offense in a very long time. Like we've seen a lot of names come and go, the Quez Watkins of the world.
Julio?
Nobody Julio. Yeah, Julio, name a guy. But we've never seen production out of that spot. There's just not enough to go around. The tight end is a staple in this offense, whether we like to admit it or not. Dotson has a better talent profile than anyone we've seen in that wide receiver 3 slot. So it's always subject to change, but I'll have to see it first. I mean, obviously the Commanders thought enough of Jahan Dotson to get rid of him for pennies on the dollar. So perhaps the talent really truly is not there for Dotson.
All right, that will do it on the Pat Mayo experience for the first solo island games Thursday and Friday. Showdown Picks, the Underdog Pick'em, code Mayo at Underdog right now. That deposit bonus is up to $1,000. I did want to ask you about the prop sniper, because the Chuba Hubbard under rushing attempts prop ended up going up to 15.5, which made it a stronger play. But this Isaiah Likely one just continues to mill about as the top rated one on the slate by like a pretty wide margin.
Yeah, and we're constantly looking at where we're off from market, because my initial thought anytime I see that we're way off on market is, holy crap, we've screwed up the projections, And so that's the first thing I do is like, okay, do we stand by this? Is this legit? And for Likely, I say, yeah, it is legit. We do stand by that. He is not going to get a ton of routes in this offense with everyone healthy. That's not what we've seen from them historically. And I feel pretty strong about the fact that under 2 is a smash, under 1.5 still a really strong bet.
There's no overs on this list, by the way. They're all just under.
Yeah.
The first over is, I think, the 23rd rated prop, and it's over Josh Jacobs' receiving yards. And it's like a
Like,
ladder play too. It's at Bet Rivers. It's 24.5 plus 190 to the over. Is a 49% winner on a 2-to-1 bet.
Yeah. Smash the Josh Jacobs overs. I think he's going to have a great game.
Do you think it's going to be over mainly through the air, or do you think it's going to be mainly through the ground, or both?
I think it's going to be both. I think he's going to be hyper involved in this offense. I think they're thirsty to be able to feature a guy like that. So yeah, I think he has a smash game.
All right. RunTheSims.com. You can get the Prop Sniper package by itself, which also includes all the props and the Underdog and all of the Pick'em tools. You can join the Pick'em League. That's down in the description. Or get the main focus where you get the simulations. You get every single DFS site to build lineups with, to create your own projections and go through everything. Do that at RunTheSims.com. right now. All right, smash the like while you're here. That'd be helpful, as with subbing to Mayo Media Network on YouTube, and download the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Football is back. I will be back later on Tuesday evening with Cust and Jeff. Then we got Rob and Cam. Then we got Tambo. Then we got a weekend update. And hell, Sunday's going to be here soon enough, so get ready, all right? I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!